G'day, Professor Joseph Drew, my first video for year 2023, and in this video I will outline the major challenges that we as a local government sector will face over the coming 12 months. The first challenge will be financial sustainability. This has been a challenge for several years. If you live in New South Wales since at least 2016, if you live in Queensland, we've been talking about this since at least 2006. It will continue to be a major challenge for our sector for many years, and there's a lot of pressures coming which are really going to bring matters to a head very, very shortly. Now, my advice with financial sustainability is first, get a bona fide expert to appraise your situation. Too much of this work is done by giggle and guess consultants or by regulatory agencies that just don't have the skills, just aren't looking at enough metrics to have a proper picture of what things really are like for your local government. So number one step, go and get a proper bona fide expert to look at your financial sustainability if you have any concerns at all. Number two, you should know how much unrestricted cash you have, how much restricted cash you have, and how that has been tracking over the last 7 years or so. If you don't know that, go and ask your CFO for those figures and start following them on an annual basis, or even better still, on a quarterly basis. There's too many councils being surprised when they suddenly run out of cash. We've got to get on to these situations quickly, which leads me to the third point, is if you have fiscal stress, don't bury your head in the sand. The quicker you act, the least pain it will involve for you and your community, and the better outcomes we can all get. Now, I cover all these things in my recent book, Saving Local Government. If you can get your hands on a copy, please do so. It was written for you guys to help our sector. Beware of inflation this year. A lot of people, particularly in America, are getting very excited because they think inflation has peaked. And maybe it has peaked. But that's an entirely different story to inflation going down, back down to the levels that we are comfortable with, that we're used to 2 to 3%. You know, inflation at present in Australia is above 7%. I don't think it has peaked in Australia because of the way we do our enterprise bargaining agreements, because of our inventory levels, and because of the time it takes to replenish our inventory from Europe, America, and Asia. So I don't think it has peaked. But even if it has peaked at a number above 7, that is still problematic. Many local governments will not be able to cope with inflation above 7% for a prolonged period like I'm anticipating. Inflation tends to be sticky. We tend to get in inflation spirals. Wages go up and they feed back into product costs, and that encourages wages to go up again, and so forth. Inflation in the past has always been sticky. I don't understand why people think that it's suddenly going to disappear this time round. I hope it does. But what my concern is your local government prepared for sticky inflation? Are you prepared for inflation that peaks at 7.75% like the RBA says, but remains sticky for a number of years? Maybe well below 7%, maybe 4 or 5%. But are you prepared, and can your long-term financial plan cope with 2 or 3 or 4 years of sticky inflation? If you don't know the answer to that question, go and get hold of your CFO now and get them to run some sensitivity analysis with sticky inflation for the next 2 to 3 years, and see if your council can cope, because you will need to. Expect staff costs to rise. A lot of local government sectors have enterprise bargaining agreements coming up. They'll be negotiating for much more than 2.5%. Usually the starting position for a union is inflation. Otherwise, they're asking their members, their voluntary members, to take a real pay cut. And if you do that for long, you don't have many voluntary members. So expect much higher increases to staff wages. But that's not the whole story, and that's not the whole problem. Productivity has absolutely plummeted since COVID. What people forget is that economics is a behavioural science, and people's behaviours were forced to change during COVID. People were forced to work from home. Some people were forced not to work. People were forced to do more online. People were forced to spend more time in recreation. And we suddenly expect that they'll just all snap back to pre-2019 levels. It's not going to happen. And in fact, the data is telling us that it's not happening at all. Productivity is hitting all-time lows, and it's likely to stay low for quite an extended period of time. And the third thing to think about is the skills shortage. We do have a skills shortage. It has been exacerbated by two things: the sudden demand for goods and services when we open the economy, but also this drop in productivity. If staff are producing less, companies need more staff. If they're hiring more staff, there's less staff in the potential pool for local government to hire. So that will be a problem going forward. And the final thing that people aren't thinking about is increased absenteeism. COVID is a real thing. It takes a long time to get over it. People are catching COVID all the time. At my family farm, we catch it frequently because my wife is a nurse and she's always bringing it home for us. It is going to result in more sick days being taken, which is reflected in productivity and also reflected in your costs. So these are real problems we've got to grapple with, and we don't seem to be doing a very good job of it at present. Expect more cost shifting. State government and federal government budgets are under extreme stress. Most of them aren't predicting to return to surplus in the forward estimates. Those who are being very optimistic in their forecasts. The only way they're going to make that happen is for them to reduce costs. And the most politically painless way to reduce costs is to push costs onto local government. And both federal and state government will be looking to do that wherever possible. We had an example here in New South Wales that most people missed: the transfer of auditing to central auditors. That was a cost shift device. Local government is now funding part of the Auditor General's costs. And there's many, many other examples. I expect that it will accelerate significantly this year, following the next state and federal budgets. I also suspect that there'll be a sort of cost shift in as much as there'll be less grant money flowing out of state and federal governments. They've realised you can't keep handing out money forever, that you do eventually have to look to balancing a budget, and part of that will be reducing the amount of grant money that they transfer. Now, whether that's our financial assistance grants or whether it's just the capital grants and different grant funding rounds that come up, I expect that will slow down significantly over the next year or two. I think we've all got very used to having lots of grant money flowing. I think we need to start resetting our minds back to a time prior to 2019 when there was less grant monies up for grabs, and in fact a little bit less than those times. I think there will be a period of relative austerity in grant flows. One thing that's concerning me a lot when I speak to local governments is they think that the answer to their financial sustainability problems is to grow their population. There was a very uninformed commentary by the likes of Mr. Sampson and the Independent Local Government Review Panel that said, oh, you have to be a certain size to be sustainable, and the more you grow, the more sustainable you'll be. They were just thought bubbles. They weren't based on any evidence at all. I've just finished doing some regression work, some econometric evidence based on New South Wales, but the results would be similar in most states and territory. And what I actually show is that as population grows, unit revenues, revenue per person, actually decrease. Now, what that means is, of course, your expenditure is going to go up in line with your population growth. If your revenue is decreasing in real terms, what that means is that the difference between revenue and expenditure, your surplus or your deficit, will be deteriorating as your population increases. Now, I did a study many years earlier that showed much the same thing. So it is completely wrong to think you can grow your way out of trouble. Federal governments can, because each person that comes into the country produces and buys things that contributes to GDP, that contributes to the federal tax bill. But because local government taxes are based on land values and they're often capped, because a lot of our services we provide aren't covered by fees and charges, and we don't adjust the fees and charges according to consumption rates, it's usually the case that revenue growth does not keep pace with population growth. But of course your expenditures do, which means that as you're growing, you're actually getting yourself in a worse financial position unless you take action. Now, I'm not telling people not to grow, but it does worry me the number of councils and councillors have told me, particularly recently, that they need to grow. They need to get to a certain magic figure, 10,000 for rural councils, 100,000 for city councils, and everything will be all right. That really bothers me, because as you're growing, you're actually making things worse, and you're under the misapprehension that it's making things better. So you're not taking the remedial steps that you need to take. So that's one of my biggest serious concerns. If you know someone in the local government community that is labouring under this false misapprehension, can you please tell them, no, the evidence actually says the opposite. Growth puts further additional strain on your budget. And look, you all have a role to play. Send this video to someone else. Tell them about the challenges for this year. Start a conversation. Start it in the comment sections of this video or in another forum. I don't care. I just want us all thinking about the challenges ahead of us this year. I think they are going to be hard. I think that a lot of the problems that have brewed over the last 2 years are going to come to a head towards the end of this calendar year. And I would like you to be ready. So if you have any concerns, if you want me to talk about particular topics, put them up in the comments section, or give me a ring, or send me an email, and I'm happy to do so. I only want what's best for local government, just like you do, so help me help others. Thank you very much for your time. Goodbye.